Every single reptile keeper that I have ever met, whether it was in person, online, it doesn't matter. They have a list of animals that they dream of working with in the future. Hi, my friends. My name is Cole. Welcome back to Boas and Buffoonery. Today, I want to introduce you guys to my dream reptile list. Now, what do I mean by a dream reptile list? Well, like I said, every single person that I've ever met that partakes in the reptile hobby has a list of animals that they want to work with in either the near future or the distant future, or maybe it's just an animal that they fantasize about the idea of keeping. And my list is a mile long, but most of the animals on those lists I either have been able to keep myself, keep a very similar species already, or I know for sure I'm never actually going to keep them. It's just a fantasy, and that's okay. I don't feel bad about the fact that I'm not going to check off every species on my dream species list, because that's kind of what keeps it fun. I'm never actually going to keep a Cuban crocodile. That's okay. I may never keep an olive python, and that's okay as well. And I'm almost certainly never going to keep a Spinosaurus aegypticus because, well, they haven't been around for a while, and I don't think they're captive bred. And when people are setting up their dream reptile list, there's usually a reason, or two or three, that they don't already have that animal in their collection. It could be that they don't have enough money to properly set up that animal. It could be they don't have enough space to properly set up that animal. Or it could be that that animal just isn't readily available where they live. And for others, like we've talked about, it's more just about the fantasy. But that's not what today's list is about. Today, I want to discuss animals that I have real plans to keep in the future. For a couple of these animals, it's in the not so distant future, at least I hope. And for one of the animals on this list, it is absolutely a distant prospect, but one that I'm committed to nonetheless. Number 3 on this list is actually an animal that I have almost purchased multiple times, that I've been to multiple expos with my partner, and we have agreed going in that that is the animal we will be coming home with, but we've never pulled the trigger for one reason or another, and that is a carpet python. I love carpet pythons. I think they are remarkably beautiful, and they have been on my dream reptile list since I was 15 years old. I absolutely love them. I think they're so cool. I think their head shape is remarkable. I think their behavior is super cool and unique. I love things that are semi-arboreal or semi-aquatic. Things that exist in multiple biomes really excite me, and I think carpet pythons fulfill that to the nth degree. I think they're incredible. Why then do I not have one? I just told you that I've been to multiple reptile expos with the plan to bring home a carpet python. Why don't I have one? The reason I don't yet have a carpet python is because every time I have gone to pick up a carpet python, I have ended up checking off a different animal on my dream species list that I didn't expect to be at that expo. The first time that me and my partner Megan sat down and decided, hey, we are going to go get ourselves a carpet python, we showed up and there was a breeder that had a single clutch of true red-tailed boa constrictors of the Suriname locality, and that was the day that we brought home Urza. We even had a discussion that day while we were walking around the expo that there was an adult retired breeder carpet python that we heavily considered, that we thought this may actually be the perfect opportunity for us to take in not a rescue, but like a rescue adjacent animal, and take great care of this animal in its retirement, so to speak. And there were a couple babies that we thought were remarkably beautiful, and we were excited about the opportunity to raise up a baby carpet python. Ultimately, we made the decision that we were only taking home one animal on that day, and I think that was the right decision. It was the right decision for us at the time, and I think it ended up being the right decision for all of the animals involved, and we came home with Urza, who is a delight, and I wouldn't trade her for the world. But that sort of, again, bumped carpet pythons back onto the list. And the second time that we went to an expo with the expressed plan of bringing home a carpet python, I met Kaz. And this is one that I don't feel bad about necessarily, but I do know for sure that if it had been up to Megan at the time, we would have a carpet python and we would not have a yellowtail Crebo. But Drymarchon at the time had become a crazy obsession of mine, and they still are to this day. I still think the Drymarchon are some of the coolest snakes on the entire planet. But when I saw Kaz, I was shocked to see baby yellowtail cribos available at an expo in Ontario, Canada. So I jumped on the opportunity, and I don't have any regrets. But again, it was another situation where a carpet python got bumped further down the list. I am pretty confident though that the next snake that we bring home will be a carpet python, though this time around it will likely be a rescue. I don't often hear people talk about reptile rescues as an option for getting a pet reptile, but there are plenty of them out there. And when it comes to species that are maybe overbred in captivity, or even snakes that are just readily available but get rehomed a lot, I think it's a really excellent ethical option for pet ownership when it comes to reptiles, just like it is with cats and dogs. And the reason I would heavily consider adopting a carpet python as opposed to buying a captive bred baby is just because they're out there in rescues. They need homes, and it would be awesome to give a carpet python kind of that second chance at life. Now, I said very specifically that the next pet snake that I bring into my home will very likely be a carpet python, but I did not say that the next pet reptile I bring into my home will very likely be a carpet python. That's because number 2 on my list is an animal that I have grown completely obsessed with over the last 6 months or so. I've always loved this animal. I've always been intrigued by this animal, but my infatuation with them has absolutely exploded since working closely with one in a zoo setting. I am talking about my favorite geckos on the planet, Tokay geckos. Now, I love Tokay geckos for a variety of reasons. One, I just love massive geckos. I think they are really quite cool. I also love animals that hold some sort of bizarre record. And the fact that the Tokay gecko holds the record for the strongest bite of any gecko species, I think is awesome. Not just because they have a strong bite, but because geckos in general are kind of seen as placid and derpy, and they don't really... And most geckos aren't known for biting, but somehow the Tokay gecko has managed to stamp that claim. I also know for myself that I am very drawn to animals with bad reputations. Just look at my collection and you'll see that I have a yellowtail cribo, an animal that is known for being flighty and feisty. I have a blood python, which is known for being a living landmine that will bite anything that comes within a few inches of it. And even outside of reptiles, my pet dog Xena, who I love to death, is an American bully. An American bully mix. She's a mutt of some sort, but regardless, most people see her, think she's a pit bull, and think they need to hide their toddlers. For whatever reason, throughout my life, I have always been drawn to animals that are other. I think it's what draws me to reptiles as a whole in the first place, but even within the reptile community, people don't seem to like Tokay geckos. Most reptile keepers that I've talked to about Tokay geckos describe them as mean and bitey and nasty. And quite honestly, unlike almost every other animal that I have had that sort of discussion with, for the most part, it holds up. I had lots of people tell me that my blood python was going to be a nightmare, but he's a delight. I've had plenty of people tell me my cribo was going to be a nightmare, and he was fantastic. I've had people even tell me that carpet pythons are a nightmare to work with, and everyone that I have interacted with has been wonderful. I have interacted with a small handful of Tokay geckos. They have all been nightmares. They have all been flighty, they have all tried to bite me, and they have all been just kind of unpleasant to work with. Why then do I want one so bad? That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Well, because I've seen it done. I've seen it done well. I have seen other YouTubers who take phenomenal care of their Tokay geckos and have managed to build excellent relationships with those Tokay geckos, and I want to be a part of that. I think that's amazing. Much like I wanted to be part of the wave of people who took excellent care of their blood python and have a really, really handleable blood python, I want to be part of the wave of people taking great care of Tokay geckos and having a really handleable Tokay gecko. I am also excited by the idea of sort of training reptiles. It's something that I've been quite interested in the last couple years or so, whether it's tap training, whether it's target training for food, whether it's just finding different ways to enrich your animals' lives. And with Tokay geckos, I feel like that's a really neat opportunity to practice a couple of these training methods and see how they work with an animal that has such an awful reputation. A big goal for me, and it's probably mostly because I've seen it so much online, is having the ability to tongue feed a Tokay gecko while it's like climbing up my arm. It's just a fantasy that I have, and I know it's not like completely unreasonable. I know it's doable, and I know it would take a good amount of work, but that's never scared me before with any reptile ever. I love working with reptiles, or I wouldn't have this channel and I wouldn't keep pet reptiles. Another thing that intrigues me with Tokay geckos is they give me an opportunity to set up a planted or bioactive vivarium that most of the reptiles I keep and most of the reptiles I'm interested in just don't really work for. Most of the big snakes that I love so much and most of the lizards that I am interested in keeping don't really work for a planted or bioactive enclosure, but a Tokay gecko would give me the ability to start to kind of learn and practice and hone those skills in preparation for taking in a Tokay gecko, and I wouldn't have to worry so much about them totally destroying the enclosure that I set up, at least not compared to my boa constrictor or my blood python. All that and a million more reasons is why I'm so excited by the idea of keeping a Tokay gecko, and realistically, I plan on keeping one in the near future. And when I say near future, I'm talking probably the next year or less. I'm very, very happy with the animals that I have, but a Tokay gecko is probably the next addition that I am planning for. Which brings me to the animal that is the most distant prospect, the one that I will keep probably furthest down the road, and one that may even be controversial. I told you that this is a list of animals that I will absolutely keep in the future. And this is an animal that I do believe most people would say is not a pet reptile, is not supposed to be a pet for just about anyone, and for the most part, I agree with you. But my number one dream reptile that I have a plan to actually keep is the green anaconda, the northern green anaconda, the heaviest snake on the planet and my favorite animal in the entire world, next to maybe the orca, because I'm a pretty big fan of them as well. Now look, I know what you're thinking. A green anaconda is not a good pet reptile for the vast majority of people. 99.99999% of reptile keepers shouldn't even consider keeping a green anaconda in your home. We are talking about, by weight, the largest snake on the planet, and it's semi-aquatic. So not only do you need a colossal enclosure, but you basically need to figure out a way to install a small, very heated and very filtered pool in that enclosure in your house. This would be not only prohibitively expensive, but also remarkably challenging and sounds kind of like a nightmare to upkeep. Then why do I want one so bad? Well, the first reason isn't very good. It's not a valid reason to keep something like a green anaconda, but it's part of the puzzle that I'm going to put together for you. The first reason is that when I was 13 years old and I watched a video on Snake Bites TV on YouTube and I saw Brian Barczyk interacting with an anaconda, I was like, I need that in my life. I became totally convinced that I would one day keep a pet green anaconda. But even at that time, I saw the way that those keepers in that video were keeping anacondas, and I knew it wasn't good enough, right? Like, I understood this is an animal that lives in the Amazon, that swims in the rivers in one of the craziest jungle climates on the planet. They need a little more than what was provided in those old videos. Which brings me to my second reason, is that I don't want to just set up an enclosure for a green anaconda to live in my home. My goal is to set up the single greatest green anaconda enclosure in any private collection in the world for sure, and I honestly hope to rival any zoo that has ever shown green anacondas on exhibit. I understand that this is a remarkably high bar, but I think it's a bar that is almost necessary to at least try to hit if I plan on keeping an animal that realistically, if I'm being honest with myself, probably doesn't belong in captivity in the vast majority of situations. When I talk about an enclosure that is colossal, that is the size of a large room and includes a filtered and heated pool, I'm not exaggerating. That is the type of setup that I feel I would need, and I would have to somehow come up with the funds for if I was to keep a green anaconda. Which is why I say that this is a very down the road proposition, that this is a very long-term goal of mine to keep a green anaconda. The third reason why I think that I would actually do very well keeping a green anaconda, beyond just my sort of lofty expectations of myself in regards to keeping a snake like that, is that I have tons of experience working with giant snakes. I have worked with reticulated pythons, I've worked with Burmese pythons, I have worked with huge common boas, and I've worked with yellow anacondas, and I've seen them taken care of well, and I've seen them taken care of very poorly, and I understand the consequences of poorly keeping a giant snake. I've seen it, and it made me miserable to see those animals in that sort of environment. I would never allow that to happen within my own collection. I would not take on the responsibility of the reputation of an entire species in my community, which is essentially what you're doing when you take on a giant snake. You become the giant snake guy. I wouldn't take on that responsibility unless I was so incredibly sure that I could do that animal justice. And the fourth reason why I know for sure I would take good care of a green anaconda is another kind of goofy one. It's that I have always wanted to set up an enclosure for a green anaconda that would allow me to go swimming with that anaconda. And I understand that this doesn't really hold the weight of the last couple of reasons, but it does reassure me that my goal for keeping something like a green anaconda isn't just to say that I have it. It's because I want to interact with an anaconda in an environment that is as close to going for a swim in some cloud forest in the Amazon as I could possibly get within a captive setting. I want to interact with an anaconda on its terms in an environment that is built for that snake and not necessarily built for me. And that's what gets me so excited about the future and the future of owning something like a green anaconda. Also, the green anaconda is this massive apex predator from one of the harshest environments in the entire world, and yet its face looks like that. Its face really looks like that. They're so cute and so derpy for being potentially 300-pound, 30-foot snakes. A green anaconda somehow still manages to look absolutely adorable, and I just think they're so neat. I get so giddy talking about these things. Yeah, I love green anacondas. They're on my list. I will own one day. It's going to be a massive, it is going to be a colossal undertaking, but it's one that I take seriously. And I truly understand the ramifications of doing it wrong. And I think that enables me to succeed as much as having seen somewhat successful attempts at keeping them in captivity before. I'm excited. Anyways, those are my top 3 dream reptiles that I will absolutely keep in the future. I do have a couple upgrades that I want to make to my enclosures for my current animals before I even think about bringing in any more reptiles, but it is still just fun to think about the future and think about the animals that I can't wait to work with once I have the extra time, space, and money to do so. But I'm assuming if you watch this channel and you're still watching this video that you are also a reptile keeper or a reptile nerd, or at least want to be someday, and that's awesome. So what is your dream reptile species? It doesn't have to be as lofty as a green anaconda, but it also doesn't have to be super practical. Let's have some fun with it. Regardless, while you're on your way down to the comment section, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, it would mean the absolute world to me. I really, really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day, an awesome rest of your week, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers. I went to a concert last night, and it got a little rough. So I'm pretty sore today. It got a little rough.